Hello everyone, this is Sam the History Man coming at you again with another episode of Fletcher Destroyer Ships. Right now we are in part 2 of the USS Kidd, in keeping with our profile of Destroyer Division 96, and I hope you're enjoying it so far. Right now at this point we are at about November of 1943, just prior to the Bougainville landings. And before we get into the war diary itself, which comes, by the way, from the National Archives, I'm going to swipe another story from the USS Kidd website. It almost seems like cheating, but they do have some great stories from some of the actual veterans on that website, so I recommend you check it out if you have an interest in this sort of thing. It's a great website, the USSKidd.com. This story comes from Mr. Bill Cox, who was one of the Kidd's wartime torpedo men, and he talks about his experience during an incident which occurred on November the 11th of 43 during the Bougainville landings, just a few months after the Kidd's run-in with the North Carolina that we spoke of in the last episode. And so here we go. The action that I remember the clearest was the 11th of November, 1943, the invasion of Bougainville, which was in the slot between Rabaul and Bougainville. We went in to pick up a pilot. We put a strike over at dawn into Rabaul, and we had probably just landed most of our aircraft, and one of them had apparently gone down. But before we could pick him up, the Japanese jumped right out of the sky on us, and the first one I saw came right around our fantail on the port side, right straight up the starboard side. He was so close I could have hit him with a spud. He lasted about 10 seconds. There was an F-6F Hellcat right on his tail, and he splashed him right there. After that, it got very interesting. We went out to try to pick this pilot up, and every time we slowed down, the Japanese thought we were dead in the water, and they came in to try to polish us off. At one time, I was on the port side of the bridge, and there was a flash in the water. A torpedo was coming in on the port quarter, and there was a plane flying in on the starboard bow. A Japanese torpedo plane with a torpedo slung right underneath the plane. Well, he dropped it, and it was running hot, straight and normal. Being a torpedo man, I knew exactly what that meant. It's going to blow us straight to hell. So the old man, the captain at this point, Commander Allen B. Roby, didn't see it. He was looking at the torpedo on the port quarter, and the guns were going off, so he couldn't hear me screaming at him. So I just pounded him on the back until he turned around and looked at me, and I pointed to the torpedo in the water. He immediately ran into the pilot house and grabbed the engine order telegraph and pushed it to flank ahead on one screw and emergency astern on the other. And we just sat there and vibrated. And one fish went up the starboard side and the other one went up the port side. And that's the gospel. I was so damn scared. I walked around on the starboard side and lit up a cigarette and figured, well, how high is that son of a bitch gonna blow me? I was so absolutely certain that we were gonna be hit. It was a remarkable maneuver by a man that really knew how to con a ship. At this same action, we went on picking up this man, and we went alongside with lines and nets, and we tried everything we could to get him in there. But every time we just about get him, the Japanese would jump on us again. We'd have to take off and leave him. And finally, Lang went over the side. He was a gunner's mate and was holding this one aviator up. We went back again and again, trying to pick him up, and every time we did, the Japanese would either bomb us or strafe us or do something. Finally, the old man put a boat in the water, and they went out and picked him up. And it took a couple of tries to get the boat back in, because they still kept jumping us, because we were way outside of the formation, and they figured we'd been hit. We finally got the boat back on and got back to the squadron, and we pulled that famous naval maneuver known as getting the hell out of there, end quote. Now, it's important to note that the Kidd conducted this rescue operation alone while they were away from the main battle group. The official reports list her as being attacked by 8 enemy aircraft. By the end of the engagement, she had splashed 3 enemy planes and rescued both of the downed airmen, returning them to their carrier, the USS Essex CV-9. And this action won Commander Roby the Silver Star for gallantry. The War Diary for the month of November 1943 picks up on November the 11th. At 13:35, SC-2 radar picked up a raid just prior to the OTC warning on TBS. Kidd, about 3,000 yards on the starboard quarter of the Bunker Hill, increased speed to take station on her starboard beam, which was somewhat exposed due to a slight separation from task group while launching. CIC reported that fighters had gone out beyond this raid. OTC ordered Kidd to rescue men from the VT-9 plane, which had crashed while taking off from the Essex. This crash had occurred at about 13:41, and the men were now well astern of the Essex and not in sight. We proceeded toward the Essex wake, 4,000 yards away, and altered course to investigate a green dye marker. A VT plane indicated the location of men ahead on this new course. Control reported on a target at a range of 32,000 yards. As this raid came in, the control officer counted 20 VALs and Vs, and they were unopposed at an altitude of 17,000 feet. He tracked them all the way in at about 13:53 as the 3 lading valves nosed over into dive on a carrier. The main battery opened fire. Kidd was now at the scene of a crash and too far away for any effective gunfire. We were at a range of about 15,000 yards. Ceased fire when the burst from other ships appeared near the target. A decision was made to stop to recover the men as the ship was under no immediate threat, and one man appeared to be about done for. From this time until 14:25, the Kidd was maneuvered in the vicinity of the men, alternatively engaging enemy aircraft, avoiding torpedoes, and conducting rescue operations. The ship rejoined the formation at 14:50 after the action had ceased. The action, a total of 178 rounds of 5-inch .38 caliber, 500 rounds of 40 millimeter, and 2,092 rounds of 20 millimeter were expanded at the numerous targets engaged. Of these targets, only the following 8 are reported as being primarily Kidd targets. A VAL on his way home and flying low passed about 200 yards across the stern. The aft 20 millimeter battery definitely obtained hits on his engine, and he crashed about 1,500 yards on the starboard quarter, just as 2 fighters were overtaking him. This plane may have strafed the ship, but evidence is not conclusive. One Kate engaged by 4 fighters passed around from port to starboard at about 1,000 yards and was taken under fire by the forward 20 millimeter guns and was shot down in flames by the fighters. Another Kate, having delivered an attack on the formation, crossed ahead from port to starboard, and the main battery opened fire at about 6,000 yards. The Kate was turned toward the Kidd, burst into flames, and crashed. No fighters were present. One Kate came up from the stern and turned toward the starboard and went away on the starboard beam. The closest range was about 500 yards. The plane was taken under fire by 140 millimeter and 320 millimeter, and apparently hit, but was believed to have escaped. Another Kate came in from the starboard bow to approximately 1,500 yards and turned to a paralleled and opposite course. 140 millimeter and several 20 millimeters opened fire and obtained hits. The plane burned and crashed at about 3,000 yards on Kidd's quarter. The presence of fighters was not remembered. One Kate, making a run on Kidd, came in from the forward port beam. The main battery opened fire at about 5,000 yards. The Kate dropped his torpedo immediately and turned into his right. The ship was turned to come back with the full rudder and by crossing engines. The entire automatic weapon battery on the port side opened fire as the range closed. The Kate passed about 2,000 yards down port side and crashed in flames at about 6,000 yards on the stern. One Kate came in on the Kidd from the port quarter, chased by two fighters. The fighters pulled up as the Kidd opened fire with the aft 5-inch and 40-millimeter guns at about 4,000 yards. The Kate dropped its torpedo immediately and turned to his right. The fighters re-engaged and shot the Kate down in flames. And finally, another Kate, believed to be the last one to make an attack, crossed from port to starboard at about 6,000 yards ahead, making a run on the formation and unopposed. The forward main battery guns took him under what appeared to be accurate fire, but did not bring him down. He was shot down by a combination of fire from the formation and the fighters. Now, there were 15 enemy planes engaged in this action, and of those 15, all 15 were shot down, but of those 15, at least 8 are believed to have been either shot down by the Kidd, or the Kidd at least played a role in shooting the plane down. They were, in other words, shared kills. In the action report, it also says that the commanding officer considers that the planes, of the 8 he listed, by the way, that planes 1, 3, and 6 were definitely shot down by the Kidd, and that the plane number 5 was probably shot down by this ship. Now, Commander Roby, not one to mince words, had some strong recommendations to the higher command after this action, and the war report or war diary reads as such: "It is submitted that the Kidd should not have been detached from the formation for rescue work when an air attack was imminent. It is recommended that when air attacks are imminent, that carriers drop rubber life floats over the stern upon takeoff crashes, thus leaving destroyers free to gain their air defense stations promptly. It is recommended also that destroyers be kept on their anti-submarine screening stations only while the formation speed is slow enough for effective echo ranging. That when the speed is high and the air attack is probable, destroyers be moved into their air defense stations. As a rule, time will be insufficient to perform this evolution after a raid is detected." Herschel Lang was referred to in the story from the USS Kidd website, and Commander Roby recommends that he receive the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. And he states that while the ship was engaged in the rescue of 2 men from a crashed plane, and while an enemy air attack was in progress, seeing that one man was in desperate need of assistance, Lang went over the side and into an act above and beyond the call of duty in an effort to save that man. Lang was in the water approximately 30 minutes, supporting the man's body until the ship could be brought back to the scene and effect his own rescue. The men had apparently drowned before Lang reached them. That's a sobering thing to read, and it's signed Alan Roby. Of course, Ernest Herschel Lang, Jr. was a gunner's mate 3rd class, and it will be interesting to find whether or not he actually received this medal. I certainly hope that he did. Now, as for the rest of 1943, the Kidd would, of course, have taken part in the bloody, horrible Tarawa campaign, during which time she spent most of her time on anti-aircraft duty while escorting the USS Independence. And then after that, she would have returned to Pearl Harbor, arriving at Pearl Harbor on December 9th of 1943 for a well-deserved rest. Now we're going to pick up the next episode in early 1944, and I certainly hope that you'll tune in for that. Looks like this is going to end up being 4 episodes because a lot of information to put out on this particular ship, the great USS Kidd, Pirates of the Pacific. I certainly hope that you are enjoying the channel and that you are enjoying this series so far on Destroyer Division 96. Of course, we're not going to stop there. My goal is to do all 175 Fletcher-class destroyers. I just think these are the coolest looking destroyers that ever served in the United States Navy, and I'm sure you probably agree. Anyhow, as I said, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back as soon as we can put another video together with part 3 of our profile of the USS Kidd and our profile of Destroyer Division 96. And we'll see you next time. Take care.